Ever since Trigicon came out with the TA-31 in 1987, there was a long spell of Prism development until the Elcan Spectre 1-4 around 2003 to 2005 in the form of the SOPMOD rifle kit SU-230. It wouldn't be until about 2011 or 2012 where optics development for fixed magnification prisms would start to take off with the likes of companies such as Primary Arms, Burris, Vortex, and some newcomers on the scene such as Swamp Fox. In my videos, I've shown a small selection of what is now a pretty large market segment. There's a wide range of price points, features, builds, weights. Prisms now have illumination, piggyback mounting, offset mounting, night vision settings, shake awake, and the largest selection of BDCs that you've ever seen. This mass expansion on the market has made fixed-powered optics cool again. Despite the wide selection that we have now, and a lot of excellent products coming up down the pipeline in the next few months, I think that there are a few concepts that can really elevate this very simple and unique optical experience. Everyone, this is your boy Fresh, and this is my top 5 Prism wish list for 2023. Trigicon's pricing structure is as follows for their ACOG line. Piggyback versions of their TA-31 and TA-11 are around the realm of $1,500. If you take away the fancy Cerakoting job and the piggyback mount as well as the RMR, you get something closer to $1,200 on the street and $1,100 on some newer forums or discounted optic stores. You experience a little bit of a horseshoe effect, however, when you get to the TA-01, where you take away the fiber optic and add a simple iron sighting system on top. The only illumination on this optic is tritium, potentially for night vision, and a backup iron sight system. That's all well and good, except the MSRP is still $1,500. Now, if I were to be frank, I believe this pricing structure really comes from military contracts, since the different branches that are using these have nearly unlimited budgets relative to the average civilian. So the more specialized models will adhere to this horseshoe pricing model. What if Trigicon, however, went a little bit more bare bones? Let's take away the tritium illumination that needs to be fixed every so often. You still have a 7075 T6 aluminum body that is forged to a very high stiffness and impact resistance, a sealed system that is 100% waterproof down to 100 meters, fairly precise, sometimes quarter MOA adjustments, a fantastic selection of reticles, and a retained ability to still mount accessories such as a piggybacked red dot, an anti-reflection device as shown by Tenebrex, and various alternative height and QD mounts for the scope itself. If you could bring the price point of a very simple optic like this down to the 800 or 850 range for something brand new, this may be an infantryman's very first and maybe even last scope for his M4 or M16. The scope can be relatively compact, not need any batteries, is a little bit more robust without the need of a fiber optic, and yet is still customizable and configurable for a person's build. Paired with the pedigree of the Trigicon name, and I think you have a winning combination for something very simple. I think the only reason Trigicon hasn't done this yet is because they would have to supposedly charge $1,750 for it. I would be delighted to be proved wrong, though. 5x magnification is a lot of power in a prism scope. You can comfortably perform PID as close as 250 yards, well-placed shots at 500 yards, and volley fire / recreational shots out to 1,000 yards with 5.56. Primary Arms had something going with their SLX Gen 3 5x Prism. It featured one of their ACSS CQB M reticles, but also the ACSS Aurora. What plagued that product a little bit to me is its relatively hefty weight, its large physical size, and its somewhat small field of view. If you're well trained, you can flex this optic for short range and back shooting. However, most of these features seem to tailor it more towards a machine gunner in the military. And I would say its field of view still isn't large enough to fully fulfill that role. Some improved models like the Steiner 536 came out that improved upon this a little bit, but it still ended up weighing quite a bit. In comes Vortex, however, a few years ago with their 5X Spitfire with piggyback capability. This allows you to use 3 different types of shooting: both eyes open back, and a quick chin weld in order to use a piggybacked red dot. I found this concept so revolutionary that I had to make a video on it. With its current feature set right now, I think it's still one of the ultimate do-it-all optics for a GPR or general purpose carbine setup. With a 5x prism and a piggybacked red dot being such a winning combination, why don't we integrate all of that into one optical setup? A current piggyback setup with the proper height for the 5x, the current piggyback setup for a Vortex yields about a height over bore of over 4 inches, yielding a pretty serious chin weld. This chin weld is not necessarily a problem, but there is a kind of lack of recoil control with a chin weld position. With an integrated red dot on top, with windage and elevation adjustments added into the housing, have a lower height over bore, maybe something closer to 2.26 inches, and still have the perfect height for night vision. Put everything all into one housing, and you have a package that's even more robust than 2 pieces. No crazy adapter systems needed, no screw length issues, no kits that you have to buy, just something that is already mounted in the housing and integrated. I can absolutely bet you, with Vortex catching up a little bit in the red dot market eventually, let's say up to the HoloSun RMR pattern red dots, the price of this product could still be half of an ACOG, or at the very least, half of the ECOS model. Would you rather have an Elcan Spectre DR or a lifetime supply of 5.56? About 6,200 rounds for the average LARPer. That kind of question is not all that simple, but I would probably go for the ammo. And yet, despite all of this, the 1-4 DR manages to still command its high price of between $1,800 to $2,500, depending on where you look. Upon closer inspection, I probably shouldn't be all that surprised. It's a 1-4 prism optic with a great field of view, excellent glass clarity, highly ruggedized construction, provisions for a piggyback red dot if you need to use for night vision, a set of iron sights if you needed it for an emergency, and a reputation as a ACOG replacement for SOP-Mod Block 2. Special Forces had nothing but great things to say about the SU-230 on their 10.5-inch Mark 18s. For the same reasons that an ACOG is so drippy, however, Elcan can continue to charge these prices for their scopes, since they are probably still being used in Special Forces, which have a fairly large budget. For these reasons, I wish some company would step up to produce a more cost and consumer version of the Spectre DR. With some inspiration from the likes of Nursedude, I think that a 1-6 or 1-4 DR with a piggyback red dot and primary arms is M8 meter reticle, I could bet you that this optic could find its way back into law enforcement and general infantry in the Army. The metric reticle would fare pretty well in the military doctrine. The piggyback red dot would provide excellent night vision capability at the right height. A true 1X would maintain great CQB ability, and a 6 or 8 power can help you reach well past 600 yards and provide excellent PID. A binary switch from 1-6 and 1-8, whether it be a lever or a knob, though the setup alone would still be heavier than most prisms or red dot magnifier setups, I don't think cloners, enthusiasts, or new kids on the block would mind this at all. There's something about an Elcan's mystique and the overall utilitarian yet beautiful look to it that will get people really scrambling for these even if they were half price. What do you think of Nurse's entry here? I quite like it. My early experiences with LPVOs have been a little bit mixed. I found them a little bit heavy, and they didn't seem to have a true 1X for the amount of field of view that they would take up, which I would find a little bit disorienting in my sight picture. They did stabilize the rifle pretty well, but I was just kind of left disappointed for the weight and price that I had to pay for these things. To each in his own, I suppose. If there was one feature, however, that looking back kind of blows my mind and worked really well in LPVOs, it was the use of a fiber dot. So for this part of my wish list, let's keep this feature as simple as a dual illumination, meaning an LED reticle and a fiber dot center dot. It may cost a little bit extra money to do this, but there's something about a bright, shiny, attention-grabbing red dot that makes even the most magnified prism very easy to use under both eye and magnified shooting. Aside from an Elcan Spectre or an ACOG TA-31, You don't get a whole lot of daylight bright illumination for the day for fast follow-up shots, especially at close range. In fact, I would advocate that the ideal solution for this comes in the form of a few features combined. You could take a crosshair reticle from a TA31, give it a center fiber dot, and an outer LED illuminated circle. When you're not using the fiber dot, the prism can be used for highly precise shooting with a crosshair BDC, including the center for group shooting. For fast follow-up shots up close, you can use back shooting with the fiber dot, while the dimmer LED illumination will allow you to make medium distance shots, as well as maintain some precision under low light. Another bonus to this as well can be the use of an occluded red dot for night vision. Even though the light transmission through the prism will be a bit lower because of magnification, you could still do a little bit of occluded shooting, especially with a dual tube. I found that even with single tubes you can perform this, but your field of view needs to be a bit smaller, and the optic body needs to disappear just a little bit more. More on that in another video. However, I think some of these combinations can fill some unique roles for specialized shooters and operators. Let me know what you guys think about this simpler feature set. Let's wrap up this list with a final request. This one's going to be directed a little bit more at primary arms. Lately I've been a huge fan of the dual prism setup, meaning taking their 1x up front and some kind of 3x or 4x magnifier in the back. I get to keep the red dot speed up front at 1x, but if I need a little bit more distance to stretch or to perform a little bit of mid-range PID, I can simply flip the magnifier over and get an increased field of view and increased object size. The PA ACSS Cyclops reticle with its chevron does have enough compensation out to maybe 300 or even 400 yards depending on the cartridge being used. Using a magnifier, however, this didn't quite feel like it was enough. With a couple of preliminary calculations, I decided to go with the ACSS Gemini 9mm reticle that you'll typically see on the 2X GLX. This reticle with its slightly smaller outer donut and two additional lines for 550 and 600 yards seemed like it would be an excellent step up for slightly longer range shooting. The issue with this BDC becomes apparent when you look at the 500/550 yard dot and even the 600/650 yard dot that's placed on the bottom. These dots are way too big to be engaging any normal size targets at typical distances. Even white steel plates at 500 and 600 yards will be completely obscured by these two. Which got me to thinking, what if PA decided to put their slightly more precise reticles into this 1X? Let's take the ACSS Raptor that's used in the 3X microprism. If you etch the ACSS Raptor into the 1X microprism, your 1X shooting will still be completely maintained. You could just adjust the donut size just a little bit for visibility purposes. But then once you flip in the 3X or 4X magnifier, you get full access to this excellent BDC without too much of an increase in cost or any increase in weight for this particular optic. Wrap this package up with a bow using 1/2 MOA or a 1/4 MOA clicks, and you may end up with a fairly serious sighting system. Really, it's an optic where you can unlock a hidden feature by buying a magnifier. I think this will do well in Primary Arms' business model, to be honest, because you don't need to use a piggyback mount or a offset mount that's typically used in their mount. Everything is in line. With just a flip of a magnifier, you have access to an excellent BDC. The larger the magnifier you end up using, the better this BDC looks. And since you already have the ranging lines on the bottom, which, inadvertently seem to be pointing towards 900 and 1,000 yards, you've just taken a red dot and magnifier setup and potentially crossed it with a GPR and even a DMR roll, potentially with longer barrels. So Primary Arms / Dimitri, if you're listening, try to consider putting the ACSS Raptor or even one of your CQB reticles into this 1X microprism, because I think this thing is such a flexible setup the way it is that it could potentially bring a lot of people towards that red dot magnifier combo and really could allow many products to be sold all in one. There might be a little extra weight in this setup, but you still maintain night vision capability, extended range shooting, daytime CQB, all at the price of you know, probably $600 and maybe 18 ounces of weight, which does put you somewhere between a single fixed magnification prism and a 1:4 LPVO, which could really be a slam dunk and a great way to micro-segment a particular section of the market. Let me know what you guys think of this list in the comments, and feel free to give your own suggestions as well. I could put this in a part 2 of the video if you like, with your comment referenced. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll see you on the range.